Hi, and welcome to episode 13 of CultureWatch Radio. I'm Andrew Smith, and with me is Bill Muhlenberg. They say a week is a long time in politics, and as the Tarooma Fire Brigade tweeted, a reminder that Australia getting a new Prime Minister is an ideal time to check the battery in your smoke alarm.
Yes, absolutely. It certainly has been a week of tumult. Just in case people are not aware, we woke up one morning earlier this past week with a Prime Minister. In the next few hours, we had an altogether different Prime Minister. Incredibly, we've had now 5 different Prime Ministers in the last 5 years. That's almost a bit of a record. We're getting up there with Italy and some other countries. So yes, it's certainly been a week of intrigue, and one wonders what's going to happen next.
And you were actually in Canberra when all this happened.
Yeah, well, that's right. We had our annual, a couple of things, a National Prayer Breakfast and National Alliance of Christian Leaders. So we were there on the weekend, I and a bunch of believers. In fact, on the Monday when all this happened, we met with quite a few politicians. We prayed for them. We had a bit of worship with them. We chatted with them, even presented a few awards to some of them. And then as soon as the lot of us left Parliament House, we heard the news that this coup had taken place. So it was quite amazing to have been there. You almost sense the kind of spiritual dynamics going on here. It's obviously politics, but, when we pray and we seek God, there can be impacts as well, and not always the way we expect.
So on that topic, what is the deeper significance of the leadership spill?
Well, it depends, I guess, on your political stance and other things. If you're a Christian, a bit conservative, certainly if you're a Liberal Party member, it's been a real concern. We've had a stabbing in the back of perhaps our most conservative, principled, religious Prime Minister for quite some time. And in his place, we've got a very left-wing activist in the person of Turnbull. Many have quipped that he'd make a great Labour Party Prime Minister and leader, but now he's leading the Conservative Party. So that's been a big concern for many, and wondering which way we may proceed.
So what degree should the Christians be concerned about this?
Well, Christians are obviously interested in godly government. There's heaps of passages that speak about righteousness exalts a nation, sin is a reproach to any people. Mind you, we do read about God lifting up and taking down leaders, so how much of all this is part of the divine plan? Either way, we have to be concerned when Christians are given the boot and, basically pagans are brought into power with fairly radical agendas. We know his position on abortion, homosexuality, and so on. So that's a very real concern. So Christians need to double down in their prayers and keeping the liberals accountable now.
And to pray for our leaders.
Well, absolutely. That's something we're commanded to do in Timothy, as Paul says, and whether we like them or not, we certainly have to pray for them. And of course, if they are, in our eyes, bad news, we can always pray that God will improve or remove, get Turnbull on the right track or get him out of the way. I think that's a legitimate prayer as well.
Tony Abbott has promised to not effectively do a Kevin Rudd and be undermining from behind the scenes, but to support the Prime Minister. Does this mean that there's no more Liberal leadership challenges?
Well, Tony Abbott has been very gracious indeed. He's the one who comes shining through the most here. We have 54 backstabbers, 44 loyal defenders of Abbott, and Abbott himself, who's just been a gentleman and, it's not your usual political response. So he's been doing great. But the idea that everything is now resolved and there will be no more spills, we thought this is how Labour always operates, one spill after another, but it's looking like the Libs are moving in that direction as well. So there's certainly many disgruntled Liberal politicians and national, and the idea this is all settled and everything is fine now, I think that's a bit of wishful thinking.
In the wake of losing Tony Abbott, a lot of Conservatives have been asking who they can even vote for now. I mean, what options do they have?
Well, yes, that is a big issue, both for Conservative politicians as well as Conservative voters. Early on, there was talk that some of the real hardcore Conservatives might even leave the Libs, people like Cory Bernardi from South Australia. It sounds now like he's just said he will stay with the Liberals, but that is the feeling amongst many. The Liberal Party has betrayed us. It's no longer a Conservative party, a party of principle, but it's a party that's happy to divide itself and to do whatever it takes to get somebody in who, in theory, is going to help them win. But we just had the Canning by-election, won handily by the Liberals. And I suspect that if Tony Abbott were in, he still would have won handily. So this idea, we have to get rid of Abbott. He's a liability if we want to have success at the polls. I think the whole strategy was a bit dodgy, and now it's left many Conservatives wondering, where do we go?
So ultimately, what is the Christian responsibility when it comes to government?
Well, God has, in fact, created government. The state is one of his institutions. Certainly the church is one. The church deals with forgiveness and sin and mercy, but God has also created the institution of the state, which deals with law, crime, punishment. There can be a bit of overlap between the two, but they really are two distinct entities which God has set up. And so God expects us, believers, to be involved in this institution. He created government. He expects us to be involved in a fallen world. We need governments. We need laws. That's the way it works. When there's too much people doing their own thing, we can't count on them being inner directed. As Chuck Colson used to say, we either have cops or conscience. Conscience is not enough in a fallen world, so we need cops on the streets. So Christians of all people should be concerned about government, and as we already mentioned, we should be concerned about godly government. Righteousness does exalt a nation, and there's plenty of those sorts of passages that urge us to not only pray for our leaders, but to pray that righteousness would be the foundation of government. So we have a big obligation. That's part of how we are to be salt and light. We do that on an individual level, but it also works out on a governmental level as well.
As always, more information and resources are available at the Culture Watch website, and we'll see you again next week with another episode of Culture Watch Radio.